All right, so everyone's heard of Machiavelli, right? But today we're going beyond the prince.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
really going to deep dive into his ideas about leadership and power, and
Definitely.
I think people are going to be surprised that there's a lot more to him than
Absolutely.
just be a jerk to get ahead.
Yeah. What's really interesting about Machiavelli is that his ideas weren't just like
Yeah.
theories. He was a diplomat
Oh, wow.
and a government official. So he was right there in the thick of it
Oh, wow.
in 16th century Italian politics.
So he knew what he was talking about.
He really did. He lived and breathed this world of rival city-states,
Wow.
alliances shifting constantly, backstabbing. I mean, it was a cutthroat world, and that's what makes his writing so powerful.
So we're not talking about some philosopher sitting in an ivory tower.
No.
This is a guy who had seen it all firsthand.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I can't resist.
Sure.
We got to talk about this infamous Machiavellian phrase.
Yeah.
The ends justify the means. Even though we're going beyond the prince today, we got to pack this.
We do.
Because on the surface, that sounds brutal.
Yeah, it has a really tough reputation.
Yeah.
But it's more complex than just do whatever it takes.
Right.
Machiavelli was really saying that sometimes leaders have to make these difficult choices for the greater good.
Right. So maybe some things that aren't
Exactly.
morally perfect.
Not squeaky clean, but in the long run.
Right.
It's for the benefit of the state and everyone.
Okay, so less about what's good for me and more about what's good for everyone in the long run, even if it's a little messy.
That's a great way to put it.
Can you give us a real-world example of this, something that really brings this to life?
Well, think about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Okay.
Kennedy was facing a potential nuclear war.
Yeah.
And he chose a naval blockade, which was a huge gamble.
Right.
Because it could have escalated the conflict.
Oh, yeah.
But it also put pressure on the Soviets, and they backed down. So was it morally ambiguous? Yes. Was it risky? Absolutely. But it might have saved the world.
Well, so it's like looking at the big picture sometimes.
The big picture, exactly.
Prioritizing the long term, even if it means making some tough choices along the way.
And Machiavelli understood that.
Well, that's a powerful example.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, you don't see that in your average political science textbook.
It's real life.
So we've got tough choices. We've got prioritizing the big picture. But Machiavelli also knew
Yes.
that it's not just what you do, it's how you're seen.
Oh, absolutely. He was way ahead of his time in understanding perception.
Yeah.
He said that appearing virtuous, appearing honest, and just was just as important as actually being virtuous.
Oh, wow.
Especially if you're trying to lead people, you need that trust.
So it's about maintaining the public image.
Exactly. And this was centuries before.
Right.
2047 news cycles and social media.
Yeah, it's like he predicted the age of the carefully crafted political image.
Absolutely.
And those staged photo ops. I mean,
seriously, though, it's more relevant now than ever.
I think so.
With leaders being scrutinized constantly.
For everything.
For their personal lives, even.
It's a constant balancing act.
Yeah, between reality and perception.
Exactly.
Okay, so image matters. But what about another classic leadership question? Is it better to be feared or loved? I feel like this is where that ruthless Machiavelli stereotype really comes out.
Right, that's what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
But what Machiavelli actually said is really interesting.
Yeah.
Ideally, a leader should be both feared and loved, but if you had to pick just one, he said fear was more reliable.
More reliable.
For control, yeah. But he also said that you should never be hated.
Oh, interesting.
Because that's what will undermine you.
Okay, so it's not just about ruling with an iron fist.
No, it's more nuanced than
There's a strategy to it.
Definitely.
So how does this play out in the different leadership styles we see today? I mean, some leaders are more charismatic, some are really tough and authoritarian.
I suspect. Where do you think Machiavelli would fall on that?
I think he'd say the most effective leaders find that middle ground. They inspire respect.
Right.
Maybe even a healthy dose of fear.
But they don't go too far.
They don't become a tyrant.
Like someone like Margaret Thatcher.
Oh, good example.
She was a powerful leader, not afraid to make those tough choices.
And she commanded respect.
Absolutely.
Even from people who didn't agree with her.
Yeah, so there's that balance of image and maybe a little bit of strategic fear.
A little bit.
But Machiavelli wasn't all about manipulating people.
No.
Or ruling through fear, was he? Didn't he also talk about something called virtue?
Yes, virtue.
Huh.
And this is another part of his thinking that gets overlooked.
Okay.
It's often translated as virtue. But for Machiavelli, it was much more than that.
Oh, interesting.
He saw it as this combination of qualities. Cleverness, decisiveness, the ability to seize the right moment.
So not just being
Yeah.
a good person.
Right. It's more than that.
Yeah.
And he didn't think it was something you were born with. It was something you developed
Oh.
through experience and action.
So you're not just sitting around hoping good things will happen.
No, you're making them happen.
You're shaping your own destiny.
Exactly.
It's almost like, okay, imagine you're a surfer.
Okay.
You can't control the waves, right? But you can learn to read the ocean and know when to paddle like crazy to catch that perfect wave.
That's a great analogy.
So it's about having the skills and the foresight that virtue to take advantage of the opportunities that come your way, or maybe the challenges.
Exactly. And that's actually very empowering, don't you think?
Yeah, I do.
We're not just along for the ride. We have some control.
We're not just passengers in our own lives.
Right.
And this ties into another one of Machiavelli's key ideas, right?
It does.
The importance of self-reliance.
Self-reliance, yes. And I bet you can see why, given his experiences. In Italian politics, he saw how quickly alliances could crumble.
Oh, yeah.
So he stressed that rulers needed to be self-sufficient, especially when it came to military strength.
So don't rely on others too much, because they might let you down.
Exactly. Their loyalty could shift at any moment.
It's like that saying, if you want something done right.
Do it yourself.
Exactly.
And while we're not saying everyone needs their own army,
right,
I think there's a lesson there about personal independence and resourcefulness.
Yeah, being able to stand on your own 2 feet.
Absolutely.
Whether you're running a country or just navigating your own life.
Exactly.
So Machiavelli, complex,
Definitely.
insightful, and maybe not quite the villain he's often made out to be.
Not at all.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the ends justify the means to virtue and self-reliance, all without even opening the prints. But I have a feeling there's even more to uncover.
Oh, absolutely. We've only scratched the surface.
This deep dive has definitely got me thinking, and I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to continue exploring the world of Machiavelli.
Sounds good. So, we were talking about self-reliance.
Wait.
There's another side to Machiavelli that I think gets missed sometimes.
Oh, okay.
He was really concerned with, the well-being of the state and its people.
So it wasn't just about rulers holding on to power.
No, not at all.
It was about the bigger picture.
Exactly. He believed that a strong, stable state was essential for everyone to prosper.
So he really cared about the people.
He did. He saw the leader's role as not just maintaining power, but using that power to make society better.
Almost like a utilitarian perspective.
Exactly. The greatest good for the greatest number of people.
So sometimes a leader has to make hard choices.
Yes.
Maybe unpopular choices.
Right.
But for the long-term good.
For the long-term benefit of everyone.
It's about thinking ahead.
It is. It's about that long-term vision.
I see how that connects to his idea that the ends justify the means.
It does.
Not about being ruthless. It's about making those tough calls.
Jade, exactly.
For the greater good.
Sometimes you have to make those tough calls, even if they're not popular.
Like Winston Churchill during World War II.
Oh, perfect example.
He made some really hard decisions.
He did.
But he led Britain through some incredibly dark times.
Exactly.
So there's that balance again.
Yeah.
Tough decisions, but also maintaining a strong image.
Like we talked about.
Just like Machiavelli said.
Yeah.
But, Machiavelli wasn't all sunshine and roses, was he?
No.
He had a pretty, how do I put this? Cynical view of human nature.
Yeah, he was a bit of a pessimist, wasn't he?
He wasn't exactly Mr. Rogers.
No.
He thought people were selfish and ambitious.
Driven by greed and fear and power.
But, he was writing in a pretty chaotic time.
Right. It was a very turbulent period.
So maybe that shaped his outlook.
Absolutely. He saw a lot of betrayal, violence, shifting alliances.
All that backstabbing.
I mean, he saw how power could corrupt.
Right. So his cynicism may be a bit harsh.
Right.
But it came from what he saw firsthand.
It did. His world was a tough place.
So we got to remember the historical context.
We do, always.
When we're reading his work.
It gives us a different perspective.
Right. A lens to view power through.
Yeah.
But we have to use our own judgment, too.
We can't just take everything he said literally.
Right. We have to think critically.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the ends, justifying the means in image and fear, versus love and virtue and self-reliance.
We have covered a lot of ground.
But how did these ideas actually play out?
Oh, in so many ways throughout history.
Give us some examples.
Machiavelli's influence is everywhere.
Right.
From the Renaissance to the Cold War.
Really?
Leaders and strategists have been using his insights
Oh, wow.
to navigate power dynamics on a global scale.
It's amazing to think his ideas are still relevant.
They are. Human nature doesn't change that much.
Right.
And neither do the fundamentals of power.
So ambition and strategy and influence.
They're all still at play.
Even in today's world.
Absolutely.
You know, we keep talking about leaders and people in power.
Right.
But can regular people benefit from Machiavelli's ideas too?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is yes.
Really?
His observations about human behavior and strategy, they apply to all sorts of situations in life.
So like navigating a tough relationship.
Exactly.
Or negotiating a business deal.
Or even just trying to achieve a personal goal.
So understanding Machiavelli could give you an edge.
I think it can, yeah.
Can you give us some examples of how this might work?
Sure. Let's go back to the idea that the ends justify the means.
Okay.
Now, we don't want to condone anything unethical.
Of course not.
But sometimes in our personal lives, we have to make tough choices.
Right, to get what we want.
To get where we want to be, yeah.
So it's about being strategic. And understanding that you might have to make some compromises along the way.
Sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
Right, like imagine you're trying to get your dream job.
Okay.
You might have to work late, network like crazy, even take on extra projects.
To make yourself stand out.
Exactly.
And that can be tough.
But in the end, you could get that job.
That's the goal.
And what about that idea of appearing virtuous?
Oh, that's a good one.
How does that apply to everyday life?
Well, we all know first impressions are important, and how we present ourselves, it really affects how people see us.
It does.
Whether you're meeting someone new or going on a job interview, you want to project an image of competence and trustworthiness.
It's not about being fake.
No.
It's about putting your best foot forward.
It is, and understanding that perception matters.
So Machiavelli was right.
He was ahead of his time.
Wow, this is making me rethink a lot of things.
It's eye-opening, isn't it?
Machiavelli, the self-help guru, who knew?
Right.
But seriously, this has been really insightful.
I think we're starting to see how relevant his work is.
Yeah, not just for leaders.
No, for everyone.
It's about understanding power dynamics and strategy.
In all aspects of life.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
So should we wrap things up?
I think so. Let's distill some key takeaways for our listeners.
All right, so we're back, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface of Machiavelli's ideas. But we got to try to wrap things up.
Okay.
So if our listeners could only remember like 3 things about Machiavelli, what would those be?
I think number 1 is that Machiavelli was a realist.
Okay.
He wasn't interested in like theories or how the world should be. He was focused on how it actually is.
So he's like, wake up and smell the coffee.
Exactly. No sugarcoating.
No rose-colored glasses.
Face reality head on.
Even if it's not pretty.
And that can be tough.
Yeah, especially if you're someone who believes in doing the right thing. But Machiavelli's saying you got to be practical.
You have to be.
You got to be strategic, even if it means making some choices that aren't easy.
Sometimes you have to.
Choices that maybe even challenge your own beliefs.
Exactly.
So it's about being pragmatic.
Pragmatic.
Even if it means getting your hands a little dirty.
Sometimes you have to.
Okay, so that's one takeaway. What's number 2?
Number 2 is that Machiavelli believed in individual agency.
So we're not just pawns in some big game.
Not at all. He believed we have the power to shape our own destinies.
Through our choices and actions.
Through action, and taking risks.
So it's not all about luck.
Not entirely, no.
We can make things happen.
We can.
That's pretty empowering.
It is. It's a very positive message in a way.
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying.
What's that?
Fortune favors the bold.
I like that.
Or maybe in this case, fortune favors the prepared mind.
Ooh, I like that even better.
It's about being proactive, taking charge.
And remember, Machiavelli was writing in a time of chaos.
Right, all those warring city-states.
Exactly. So his message was really about empowering people.
To take control of their own lives.
In the midst of all that uncertainty.
Okay, so realism and individual agency. What's the third takeaway?
The third takeaway is that we have to be careful about applying Machiavelli's ideas too literally.
Right, because his world was very different from ours.
Very different.
We can't just take his playbook and use it today.
No, we have to remember the historical context.
Different times, different rules.
Exactly.
So it's about taking the best of his wisdom and adapting it to our own lives.
Exactly. Understanding the nuances.
And the complexities.
Absolutely.
We can learn from him without
Right.
having to agree with everything he said.
It's about using our own judgment.
Critical thinking.
Sorry.
Just like we've been doing in this deep dive.
That's right.
You know, it's funny.
What's that?
We started out talking about Machiavelli in terms of leaders and power.
We did.
But I'm seeing now how his ideas apply to everyday life.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's like he's given us a secret code.
A secret code.
To understand the world.
You unlock the mysteries.
From relationships to work.
And everything in between.
So it's not just about politics anymore.
No, it's about human nature.
It's about strategy.
Understanding how people think.
It's about getting what you want.
In a smart way.
Wow. Machiavelli, the ultimate life coach.
Who knew?
So we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the ends justify the means to virtue and self-reliance.
And everything in between.
We've seen how his ideas have shaped history.
They have.
And how they can still be relevant today.
Absolutely.
Maybe even more so.
In some ways.
So to wrap this all up,
okay.
Machiavelli was a realist.
Yes.
He believed in individual agency.
He did.
And he challenged us to see the world for what it really is.
No illusion.
But he also reminded us that we have the power to shape our own destinies.
To make our own luck.
To be the masters of our own fate. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Machiavelli.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been enlightening.
And hopefully a little bit provocative.
And remember, fortune favors the prepared.
Always be ready.